If you are a fan of softball, you are going to love the Fastpitch TV show. From softballjunk.com, we're bringing you more softball than anyone on the planet. Sit back and get ready. Here's the Fastpitch TV show.
Hello, I'm your host Gary Leland, and this is the Fastpitch TV show. Make sure and take a look at all my videos, blogs, and other softball information on my website, fastpitch.tv. Now, in today's show, we have David Williams, the head coach of Morehead State University softball team. David's session is why you need competition every single day. But before that starts, let's watch this short video about my softball magazine, which you can find at fastpitchmagazine.com.
Oops, sorry. I was reading this month's issue of the Fastpitch magazine. What? You're not familiar with the Fastpitch magazine? Watch this. You are going to love it. Looks great, right? Want to find more about the #1 coaching tool on the internet? Go to fastpitchmagazine.com today.
Okay, this section is why you need competition every single day. Now, this is one that was kind of thrown at me a little bit and actually was suggested by a couple other coaches I do. I do a couple things that are a little different from some coaches as far as trying to create a competitive atmosphere every day in practice. And one of the reasons why I did that, and it really started recently. Now, I've always pushed my players and I try to get more out of them and all those things that I'm sure every coach does. But a couple of things I started doing recently I'll share with you today. I did because of the situation I'm in at Morehead. Took over a struggling program. We did not have a very good year last year, my first year. So one of the things I realized was we needed to create a competitive environment every day in practice so that when we're in a game, we don't buckle under pressure, we understand what the competition is like, and we're able to handle that. The other thing I did is I wanted to hold people more accountable. So some of the stuff I'll share with you today is fairly recent. I've only been doing it for the past year. But a couple people have really liked the idea, especially the last thing I'll share with you. And it's actually been a really big success for us, and I'll talk to you about that when we get there. But competition, I guess the first thing is we need to kind of define it a little bit and discuss what competition is. Now, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. When you say competition, I think we all think of one person versus another who comes out victorious. Now, there's a couple different definitions I threw out here. And the first one, the active competing rivalry for supremacy and prize, etc. Now, how this relates, if we're talking about someone trying to earn a position, earn a spot in the starting lineup, earn a spot in the batting order, that's their prize. So they're obviously competing for that spot. Now, one of the worst things that can happen is when a player gets complacent. If a player gets complacent, they stop competing. Okay? So, I know sometimes you may not have a situation where you can create competition. You're going to have players, especially at the high school level, I've been there, that are just significantly better than other players, and they're going to play no matter what. It doesn't matter if they're the worst teammate in the world. It doesn't matter if they're a jerk. They're going to play because they're significantly better. And as long as they're not getting any major problems, then they're going to be on the field. But if you can create that competitive environment, and there are ways to do it even if there is not another individual pushing it. And I'll get to that in a minute. The second one says a contest, some prize, honor, or advantage. Same kind of thing. Okay? It's an honor to be on a roster, whether it's a high school roster, a travel ball roster, or a college roster. It's an honor. It's a privilege to play. And I do kind of feel like that's important for people to understand that. If you have tryouts, which a lot of schools have them, I know there's some schools that may say you got to take every kid that comes out and then you just divide them up between varsity and JV. But if you have tryouts, it's an honor for them to make that cut. It's an honor for them to be on that roster. And I think it's important that you share that with them. It's a privilege. And then the third one is the rivalry offered by a competitor. So one team against another, one person against another, however you want to look at it. That's how we're going to define competition. Now, we're going to try to create it every day in practice. Now, a couple things we're going to do. I got to answer some more questions here first. Let me back up. All right, why is competition important? We talked a second ago about restricting complacency. If a player knows they're going to play every game, sometimes they get lazy in practice. And I know we've all had a player that has done that. You get them at the college level, it's no different. And like we mentioned before, sometimes some players are just significantly better than others. The bad part is when they realize they're significantly better and think that they don't have to work as hard, that's when they get complacent. Now we have to restrict that. So while there may not be another player challenging that player, we have to come up for some way to individually create competition for that one player. And I'll give you some examples in a second. The second reason why competition is important, it creates the competitive environment found in the game. If they constantly feel like something is on the line, when they get in tight situations in a game, they're going to be able to adapt, they're going to be able to handle it better, they're not going to buckle under the pressure. A lot of times you see players freak out in tight situations. They don't want to be the one that is the reason for the loss. They don't want to be the one that is responsible for not winning that game. So, if you can make them want to have the ball in their hand, in their glove, or be the person at the plate, at bat, if you can make them want to be that person, whether it is a success or a fail, their mentality is going to be they're going to compete until the very last second, and they want to be the one to win. Okay? Not only win for the team, but win for their own personal self-confidence. I think we all know if your players feel better about themselves, they're going to play better. I think most of us have figured that out by now. When I was growing up, as I'm sure when most of you were growing up, your coach would treat you like a piece of trash, and that was okay. And your parents were like, do it. I don't care if the coach throws a brick at you, you stand there and take it. And that's just how it was. Okay? Now you can't get away with that stuff. You can't do that now. I can't go in there and start throwing stuff at players and tell them they're all worthless. You just can't do it. So, one of the things you do by creating the competition, even if it is a self-esteem reward, it makes them feel better about themselves and they're more willing to compete. The next reason why competition is important is it leads to a winning mentality. Okay? If they compete every day and they're fighting every day, they're never going to want to lose. Never. And if they are okay with losing, that's a problem within itself. I don't like losing. It pisses me off. I get angry. I don't like it. I'm not saying I get angry to where like I'm Hulk and I go crazy. But I don't like it. It doesn't sit well with me. It bothers me until we win again. It drives me insane when we could be sitting on a bus 10 minutes after a loss, and I hear players cracking up and laughing. Obviously, it doesn't affect them as much as it affects me. That bothers me. But if you can create that winning mentality, and if they know what it's like to win, they will not like the feeling of losing. They will not like feeling defeat. They will want to try to win every time out so they can have that positive feeling that you get from a win. So, we want to try to create a winning mentality. Now, there's several ways of doing it. We've talked about competing for a spot on the roster. We've talked about being successful in your job. If your job is to go up there and get a hit, you get a hit, you're going to be excited. If your job is to go up there and get a hit and you strike out, you're not going to be too happy with yourself. Now, here's the one thing I do. I want to point this out. Softball, baseball, whatever, and I know you've heard this before. It's okay to fail 7 times out of 10. If you hit 300, you're okay. All right? In college, if you hit 300, it's awesome. If you play Major League Baseball and you hit 300, you're a Hall of Famer. Okay? But to hit 300, you're expected to fail 7 out of 10 times. Okay? So, what I'm saying is, they've got to be successful in their job. Now, there's different ways to measure that success. Obviously, a batting average is one. I look at a lot of things inside of stats. I look at strikeouts. If your strikeouts are low, but you're hitting 250, you're a productive hitter, in my opinion. You're putting the ball in play. You're giving yourself a chance. You're giving your team a chance. Even if you ground out and you advance the runner and put them in scoring position and we score the next play, you did your job. Doesn't go down as a hit in the book, doesn't go down as a sacrifice. But you did your job. You're at bat, move the runner over, and we're going to score a run. So there's a lot of different ways to measure that. Okay? Obviously, I think when we talk about competition and having a winning mentality, the first thing we think of is how many games do we win? It's the first thing I think of. And my response is, I want to win every one of them. I want to win every game. And I tell my players before every game, I don't back down from an opponent. I'll play anybody. I'm not afraid to go play anybody. And I'll play them again. Because if you already have the mentality that you're going to get beat, if you have the mentality that you're setting yourself up for defeat, you probably will get defeated. So, you've got to establish that mentality. If they see you as a coach, not worried about another team, not worried about what's going to happen with another team, and you go out there and you just worry about your team and worry about how you're going to put your team in position to win, they're going to feed off that. If you sit there for 3 days and talk about playing the school, your rival school, and how good their pitcher is, well, they're going to be like, well, we're not going to hit. Their pitcher's really good. Okay? But if you talk to them about here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to be successful, this is our plan, this is how we're going to compete, and this is how we're going to win the game, they're going to believe they can win the game. And you might. So you have to establish that winning mentality. It's not something that you can just create on game day. It's something that you have to do every day, every practice, every drill. You try to make everything a competition, whether it is just a basic drill for the whole team, or if it's something for that individual. Because we talked about individuals may be significantly better, and it doesn't matter how hard somebody else works, that person's going to be better. So how are we going to create the competition? Well, there's a couple different ways we can create the competition. We can challenge the group as a whole, and I'll give you some examples. Okay? When we talk about challenging the group as a whole, at the beginning of our practice, the first defensive thing we do, we do some warm-up drills, but then we go into a round of infield. And I do infield a little different than most people, but we do a round of infield. When I go into that round of infield, I count every day how many mistakes are made. I count. I don't count it out loud. Count it in my head. Now, our job is to try to achieve that perfect round of infield every day. We want to have 0 errors. And when I talk about errors, I'm talking about fielding the ball cleanly, making a good throw. It's fielding and throwing. We want to have a perfect round of infield. Now, the way I do infield, there is easily, I'm going to say, probably 400 balls hit. Okay? Easily 400 balls hit. So, and it's about a 30-minute segment. So if we're fielding about 400 balls, and I'm just talking infield, I'm not talking about outfield because they do their own thing. I work with the infielders, I challenge the infielders. Okay? So my infielder's taking about 400 balls in about 30 minutes. Add in some throws, we're about equal on the throws. There are some things we do that they don't have to make the throw, but we're going to add in the throws. So roughly there's about 800 opportunities in that 30-minute segment. Now, we're trying to achieve a perfect round of infield. 0 errors. 0. In 8 years as a college coach, I've only achieved a perfect infield one time. One time. I've gotten 1 error several times. Typically, you're probably looking at about 3, 4, 5. But honestly, if you play the numbers and you're talking about 800 opportunities, that's pretty good. But we're trying to achieve 0. Okay? Now the players know that. And every day they know they're trying to get to 0. Now, sometimes there's some mistakes that happen. They happen. Now usually if it's 3 or less, I don't worry about it. But if it's 3 or more, they have to run sprints for every error they make. Okay? Now I'm not saying physical punishment is always the best way to deal with it, but in a lot of cases, sometimes when you make them run for something, and it's something they don't like doing, extra running for example, they try a little harder. So we challenge that individual group to achieve the perfect round of infield. Okay? We call it pursuing perfection. And there's a sign in the dugout that says it. Okay? We want to pursue perfection. We want to be perfect in every aspect. Every ball fielded, every ball thrown. Now there's ways inside of that whole group to challenge smaller groups. I've even done it before. Okay? If we make this many errors, we're going to run. The position with the least amount doesn't have to. So now they're competing against each other. The incentive is they don't have to run if they achieve the right, if they don't achieve, I should say, X amount of errors. But within that, they still have a goal to not achieve, or not to make errors, sorry. Okay? So if I say, all right, third baseman, you made 2 errors today. Shortstops, you made 2 errors. Second base, you made 2 errors. First base only made 1. Okay? First base doesn't have to run. So now they're competing with each other. Okay? And you'd be surprised how intense it gets over that. They even talk a little trash. They try to mess the other group up so that they'll make the errors so they don't have to run. Okay? So you can challenge them within that. You can break it out even more. We talked about the one player. The one player that is significantly better. You challenge that one player. If you tell her, I'm going to hit you 10 balls, your job, and a lot of times hitting 10 ground balls isn't a big deal. But if you tell them, I'm going to hit you 10 balls that you have to backhand, I want you to field all 10 cleanly. Challenge that person to field all 10 cleanly. Okay? Challenge them. You can take your infielders. We got a bunch of little games we do. They're all drills, but they love them. Okay? They're competitions. There's one that's a reaction drill, and it's one ball right after another, and they have to alternate forehand, backhand, and all 10 balls, it takes them probably 5 seconds to do, if that. So it's extremely quick. You would be amazed at how they fought over who was going to be the first person to get all 10 cleanly. And then when somebody finally did it, they got so excited and rubbed it in everybody else's face. Okay? There are things you can do within that. You can challenge them as individuals. Your job today is not to make a mistake. If it's a hitter, let's say you got a player that's got a constant problem doing something. We'll just say they pop up a lot. Okay? Their challenge that day as an individual hitter, I'm going to give you 10 pitches right here on the field. I know you can hit a home run. I know when we hit on the field, you like to lift the ball and show off that you can hit a home run. But here's what I want you to do today. I want you to hit 10 line drives. I don't want to see a home run. I want you to prove to me that you can hit 10 line drives. You'd be amazed that the minute you challenge them like that, all of a sudden, they don't pop the ball up. They like to get out there when you're taking BP on the field and show off that they can hit a home run. But if you challenge them individually to do certain things, you can do that. Outfield-wise, same concept. Challenge them to make perfect throws on cuts. Challenge them to field every fly ball correctly. You can challenge them as a group as a whole. You can challenge them individually. Pitchers can do all sorts of stuff. Pitchers can go down to the bullpen and play all sorts of games. They can stay down there for 3 hours and play all sorts. You can do all sorts of little challenges with pitchers. But it even goes beyond that. You can challenge them for the extent of the season with statistical stuff. A pitcher, for example, your objective is not to walk more than 10 people this year. That is your goal. As a hitter, your goal is to hit 350. Your goal is to get this many RBIs. Whatever it is, you can challenge them those ways. Some of the ways that we create competition, I'm going to give you some examples. Game formats. Okay? I kind of talked to you about my infield example. I've got a great competition game that we use when we take batting practice on the field. It drives me insane when people take batting practice on the field and I see little prayer groups all over the field. It drives me nuts. You got 3 girls here talking about this, 3 girls are standing over here talking about this, and then the ball rolls to the fence because nobody wants to go get it. So when I was coaching high school, that irritated me so much. So I created this game when I was coaching high school 12 years ago. And I still use it today, and the players love it. I don't know what it is about it. I came up with it 12 years ago, but for some reason it's stuck, and even college players love to play it. All right, here's how the game works, and you create competition. Now, your incentive for this game is the winning group gets less conditioning. That's always an incentive. Nobody likes to condition, unless you're a track person. Then that's a whole other story. But what you do is you split them up into pairs. How I do things is I already have assigned pairs for the whole year. It's usually someone that's a similar position to them. So I put them with their partner that they already have. And there's reasons why they already have that partner for multiple things, because we do a lot of things sometimes while we're taking defense on the field. But, while we're taking batting practice on the field, we may be doing some defensive stuff too. But they're already with their partner, okay? So here's how it works. You've got a partner. You and your partner, you keep track of your points. Your points get added together, and that's your score. How you get points is this. If you're on offense, and you hit the net, the pitching screen, that's a point, okay? If you hit the fence, if the ball hits the fence, I don't care if it rolls all the way to the fence, it's somebody else's fault for not cutting it off. This helps eliminate them standing around. If the ball hits the fence, you get 3 points. If you hit a home run, you get 5. Okay? You get 1 point on offense if somebody on defense makes an error. Now, if that person on defense makes an error, they lose a point. So you gain their point. So they lose a point, you gain a point. So that's how you get your points on offense. You get 1 point for hitting it back in the screen, for driving it up the middle. You get 3 points for hitting the fence. You get 5 points for hitting a home run. And then you get 1 point for every defensive error made in the field. And the defender loses a point. Okay? Now, if you're on defense, that's how you get points. If you're in the infield, you get a point for every ground ball you catch. You get a point for a line drive. You get a point for a fly ball. So pretty much if you're in the infield, you get a point for any ball you catch. If you're in the outfield, you get a point for a fly ball. You get a point for a one hopper. If it takes 2 hops, you don't get any points. You should have busted your tail to get there. If it rolls all the way to you, tough. But you need to stop it from rolling all the way to the fence to keep the person from hitting, getting 3 points. All right? So if you're in the infield, you get a point for pretty much any ball you catch, ground ball, line drive, fly ball. If you're in the outfield, you get a point for any ball in the air you catch, and you get a point for a one hopper. Like I said, you lose a point if you make an error. Now to keep track of this, each player has to count out their points out loud every time they catch it. So if I'm standing at shortstop and I get 3 balls hit to me in a row, I got to go 1, 2, 3. I got to count them out. That way nobody knows I'm cheating. All right? Now, at the end of this whole rotation, we may go through the rotation 1 time, we may go through it twice. Oh, I left out one piece of the rule. To keep one team from gaining a significant advantage over another. For example, I told you I group my players by position. So I have 2 shortstops together on one team. Okay? One player can only be in the infield on your team. That keeps you from having both shortstops standing on the left side of the infield racking up all the ground balls. Okay? So one player can only be in the infield, the other player has to be in the outfield. Doesn't matter which one. You can figure that out on your own. But that's just to keep it from getting lopsided with somebody standing covering up the whole left side of the infield and their team racking up all the points. Now typically your power hitters tend to do pretty good in this game because they'll get 5 points for every home run. Unfortunately, our catchers never win the game because after they hit on the field, we always pull them out to go catch in the bullpen. So they always complain because they never get to win. But at the end of the game, every team is responsible for totaling up their points. So your combined score, the team with the highest score, if we're running 10 polls that day, well, now you only have 8. You get to do 2 less than everybody else. That's their incentive. And you will be amazed at how competitive this game gets. You will see people fighting over who's going to catch a fly ball. You will see people talking trash to each other. You will see them diving all over the place to make sure they get the point and somebody else doesn't get it. You'll see them dive to make sure the ball doesn't hit the fence. You'll see all sorts of stuff. So this is one way to create a competitive environment within batting practice. That way you don't have people just standing around having conversations about what they're doing tonight, who's dating who they saw kiss who in the hallway, and all that stuff. Because you know that's what they're talking about. So this is a way to make them move. This is a way to create some sort of competition and for them to have some sort of incentive to want to make sure that they're hustling and doing the things they need to do. So you have the game format there. We talked about the incentive program within the infield, just fielding infield. Challenging them that way. So you can do things to challenge the whole team, you can do things to challenge just a portion of the team, or you can do things to challenge just an individual. Offer incentives. Like we talked about, we play the game, their incentive is, the hitting game, their incentive is to get less conditioning. Okay? I've done things like, okay, we're going to run through our first and third plays. We're going to go 3 times. You do it right, we're done. We're not going to do it anymore. Because there's certain things you know players just don't like doing. Okay? Offer them an incentive to do things. Create competition. Make sure they're pushing each other. Now, one of the ways I've come up to create competition, this year especially, because of the situation I was in last year taking over the Moorhead. This is a rough draft. It's not the actual form. It's similar to the form. What we did this year is we created a report card system for our players. This is a daily evaluation form. There is a book in my office on the shelf with every player's name on it. Each player has a book, and there's a whole row of books on a bookshelf in my office. And so far, there is a sheet in every book from every practice we've had this year starting September 1, when we had our first practice. When we finished fall season, we totaled up their points. We gave them a grade. When we finished individuals after our fall season before Christmas, before they went home for break, we totaled it up. We gave them a grade sheet. We're going through preseason practice right now. We have 27 practices before we play our first game. The day we get on the plane to head down to Miami, Florida to play, they're going to get a grade sheet after those first 27 practices. And they're going to know where they stand. I did this for a couple reasons. I truly believe that players are motivated by grades. Even though this doesn't mean anything. Well, it means something to me. But even though this doesn't affect their grade like at school, their GPA, they do not want to fail. They don't want to be the player that gets an F in a category. So we created this system. We did it to push them, but I also did it as a way to keep track of their progress. Now, I made the comment yesterday as we were filling these out after practice. It is time consuming, but I made this comment. I'm glad we started doing this because it allows me at the end of every practice to reflect on how that player did. And it allows me as a coach to truly evaluate that player and see what they need to work on and what their strengths are. Now, we've got it broken into several categories. Now, not each player is going to hit each category. So, for example, if you're not a catcher and you're not a pitcher, then you're not going to be in this category, you're not going to be in this category. But the first category is fielding. Now, we've got fielding broken up into 4 categories. The first one's mechanics, the second one is range, the third one is footwork, and the fourth one is consistency. Okay? So with mechanics, when they're fielding the ball, whether you're an infielder, an outfielder, a catcher, whatever the situation may be, we're evaluating your fielding. Are you approaching the ball correctly? Is your footwork good? Are your hands good? Are you underneath the ball if you're an outfielder? Are you over the ball if you're an infielder? Whatever it may be, we're grading your mechanics. Then we grade your range. Obviously, catchers don't really get graded on this. But we'll grade an infielder, we'll grade an outfielder. Are you covering a good amount of distance? Now, obviously, your first baseman, you got to be a little bit, your first baseman, your third baseman, you got to have a different criteria for what the range should be as opposed to what your shortstop and your second baseman should have and your outfielders. Okay? Footwork. Was their approach good? If you're an outfielder, how was your footwork when you were coming in to field a ground ball? How was your footwork when you were getting up underneath the fly ball? If you're an infielder, how was your footwork on your forehands, your backhands? How's your footwork on just a regular ground ball? How's your footwork on bunts? Are you setting yourself in position to make a throw once you pick it up? Consistency just means at what rate were you consistent in fielding the ball? Were you 10 out of 10? Were you 9 out of 10 that day?
Yeah.
Yes?
I don't mean to interrupt that. You score these after the practice, or do you have somebody doing it during? Or?
I do it every day after practice. I go back to my office, sit down. I primarily just take the infielders and the catchers. One of my assistants does the outfielders, and my other assistant does the pitchers. But we split it up. But we do it every day at the end of practice and rate how they did at the end of practice.
Do you make notes during practice so you'll remember so you can score them?
It's kind of hard. Sometimes I'll say something that'll remind me of this. A lot of times it's just going back and reflecting what happened in practice. I mean, you as a coach, you're going to remember if your shortstop missed 5 balls that day. You're going to remember if they made 3 overthrows. Those are the types of things you're going to remember. So I go back and I reflect on that and I remember what they did, and then we score them from there. Sometimes there is some conversation, especially with hitting. There is conversation because some days I'll be running the inside cage and one of my assistants will be running the outside cage. So obviously we've got to get together and communicate on how they did in the other cage. But it just depends. The next category is hitting, and that's broken into mechanics, contact, power, and bunting. So the one thing I should point out, at the bottom of each of those categories, they get an overall score for that day. So hitting, you got mechanics, contact, power, and bunting. I'll skip over that one right now. Pitching, it's based on mechanics, their arm, their speed, their accuracy, and then we break it into individual pitches. Screwball, curveball, drop, rise, change, all that. So how effective were all their pitches that day? We evaluate throwing mechanics. So under throwing we have mechanics, strength, and accuracy. I can get away with the mechanics being a little off, and I can get away with the strength being a little off, but what I don't want off is the accuracy. And then the catchers have a category of mechanics, arm, evaluating their throwdowns, framing, and blocking. Okay, were they lazy behind the plate today? And we even evaluate them while they're catching bullpens. I believe if they're being lazy while they're catching a bullpen, it's going to carry over. So they need to practice their framing, they need to practice their blocking while they're in the bullpen just as much as they would in a game situation. Now the one category I skipped over to me is one of the most important categories. It's the extras category. The first one in there is attitude. Did they have a good attitude? Or were they just crabby? The second one is focus. Were they focused? Did they have to ask me 10 times where they go on a certain situation? The third category is hustle. And to me, that one can replace a lot of things. If you bust your ass and you're working hard, I can overlook you making a bad throw. I can overlook you missing a ground ball here. But hustle is important. The fourth one is preparation. Preparation. Now, were you prepared for practice? Did you have everything you were supposed to have? Did you have your shoes? Did you have your cleats? Did you have your catcher's gear? All that stuff. Were you prepared? Now we have practice uniforms. We alternate between 3 sets, so that also means where they're wearing the right thing that day. I post a list in the locker room for the week. It tells them what they're supposed to be wearing. But you'd be amazed sometimes how some people mess that up. So, were they prepared? That also goes back to a mental part with focus. I hand out a 33-page playbook, first meeting of the year. That playbook has everything in it with all of our bunt coverages, all of our outfield cuts, all of our first and third situations. If I get into practice, I tell them all to know it before we start practice. Now we'll talk about it if they have a question, but you need to know where you're supposed to be. If we come into practice and we start going over bunt coverages and they don't have a clue what's going on, they're not prepared. They didn't do the homework assignment I gave them. Now I've got academics factored into that too. We don't do that on a daily basis. We don't do that on a daily basis. We only do that every 4 weeks because we get grade sheets every 4 weeks. So I don't do that one every day. But that is, now we get study hall hours every week, but are they going to study hall? Are they turning in their assignments? Are they going to class? That's factored in their academics. So, what we do is we total all this up. They get a grade for each individual subcategory, and then they get a grade for an overall grade for each category. Now, what I tell them is the important one here is what your overall is. Okay? What your overall is. Because like I said, if your mechanics are a little off, and your arm strength's a little off, but your accuracy is dead on and that pulls up your overall, that's what I'm more concerned with. Now the reason why we have the subcategories is so as a point of reference for me, I can tell you what you need to work on. When I see your mechanics are subpar, we can talk about that. Now, we have a comment section right here. Anything greater than 3 or less, this got cut off, but there's supposed to be 5s right there. Anything 3 or less every day, if we grade you a 4 or a 5, we don't write a comment. Anything that we grade a 3 or less, we write down why we graded it a 3 or less. Okay? We graded why it was a 3 or less. So we're letting you know, if you come into my office and you say, why did I get this on my report card? Or you come in and you ask me, why am I not playing? And I pull out your grade book, and I pull out the person that's playing over you, and I compare notes. Well, this is why you're not playing. It gives me a reference point. Okay? But when I introduced this at the beginning of the year, I really thought I was going to get a negative reaction out of it. The reaction has been extremely positive. You will not believe how excited they are and how much this little piece of paper means to them. Now that was my hope when I created this system. But what I found was it's important to them. And I've had players come in my office. They see their book on the shelf and they ask me, do you mind if I look through it? And I tell them yes. But if you see something in there that you don't like, don't be upset. So if they want to come in and they want to look at their book and they want to see why they got a certain grade, or they're just curious how they did one day, how we thought they did one day, we let them look at it. Okay? I'm not afraid to share that information to them because I'm not going to hide behind what I put on a piece of paper. I'll tell them to their face if they want to know. So by creating this system, they're pushing each other. If I've got 2 shortstops, they're fighting it out. I had that situation this year. Now I actually have a situation where I got to find a way to get them both in the lineup because I have a really good second baseman right now too. But one shortstop started every game last year. She got her report card in the fall. It was good. It was really good. But she was pushed so much by the new player we brought in that it made her a better player. And when I was sharing her report card with her, talking about her scores and how she's improved on certain things since last year, her comment was this: I don't feel like I can take a play off because I feel if I let up, Sam's going to be better than me. So obviously, my idea and the objective for me creating this worked. And I had a couple other players say similar comments. They played last year, but now they feel like they're fighting for something. And they've even told me, I don't feel like I was challenged last year. I never really worried about getting to play because there was nobody pushing me. So by creating this system, we've pushed them as individuals to push each other. Yes?
You plan on extending that to conditioning as well?
We have not. And actually, a lot of when we do some day-to-day conditioning, now a lot of times we'll if we see somebody slacking in day-to-day conditioning, we'll indicate that in the hustle category. Hustle and attitude. Some of their stuff, like weight room stuff, all that, that's done with the strength coach.
Oh, they do performance measure there as well?
Yeah, we're not even with them. So they go off to the weight room, and we do all of our stuff after practice. So I'm still down on the field dragging and cleaning up while they're going up to the weight room. So it's very rare that we actually go in the weight room with them. But if the strength coach feels like somebody didn't do something, they're very quick to let me know. So we haven't extended it to conditioning to the point where does it carry over to all aspects. But if we do some polls or we do some sprints or whatever the case may be, if they're slacking, we indicate that in the hustle category. Or it could be a preparation bin. We've done that too. For example, if somebody came back from Christmas break, didn't follow their workout, and they're out of shape, well, they didn't come back prepared. So they've got to make up for that somewhere. It's a good question. We're actually low on time. Does anybody have any other questions? No other questions? All right, we have 1 minute left. Thank you. I appreciate you guys being in here. Hopefully I've given you some kind of ideas to help motivate, push your players a little bit. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me. I do not have any cards on me, I forgot them, but my email address is on the Morehead State website. So if you want to email me anything, feel free. Just go on there, find my email, shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer any question you have. Thank you.
Looking for a softball bat? Do you want to save $30? SoftballJunk.com is offering an additional $30 discount on all regular price bats on the website. That's right, $30 discount. Just text the word Fastpitch to 555-888 and Gary will send you a discount code good for $30 off your next softball bat at SoftballJunk.com. FYI, that code's also good at the Arlington, Texas store.
Welcome back. Now that last short clip, well, that was my daughter Amanda telling you about my website, softballjunk.com. Make sure you text the word Fastpitch to 555-888 and get your discount code for $30 off your next softball bat. And you can use that code at checkout to save your $30 over and over and over and over. It's really a great deal. You just need to text Fastpitch to 555-888 and I'll text you back the discount code. Now, if you enjoy this show, I ask that you at least check out my website, softballjunk.com, the next time you're looking for softball equipment. Now, if I offer you a competitive price, well, please buy from me and show your support for all the free content I bring you month after month after month. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and please tell your friends about the Fastpitch TV show. And make sure and take a look at the website we have set up for you at fastpitch.tv. Until next time, this is your host, Gary Leland, saying goodbye, and thanks for watching.
This show is a member of the Fastpitch TV network. See all of our shows and blogs at www.fastpitch.tv.